Like Purdue, it's just an example. Purdue losing to Fresno State is okay. We still win the Big Ten West. Me,
Billy Napier gets fired. I'm just kidding.
hey, really the best time of the year. I will be seated watching the Red Zone for 7 hours on Sunday. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to a new episode of Backyard Banter. Johnny, James, Tanner. Before anyone does anything, if you're new, hit the subscribe button. Keep helping us grow. But the biggest news probably of the year in all of sports, the college football playoff came out. Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama. Tanner, did they get it right?
Yes, the committee did get it right. I feel bad for Florida State first and foremost. I think they have a right to be disappointed. But the harsh reality of the situation is if they had Jordan Travis, this might not even be a thing, but they don't. The committee put the 4 best teams right now in the playoff. They got it right. Me and James were sitting here arguing. It was before Florida State played in the ACC championship game, and he's like, if Florida State wins, they're in. And I told James about 10 different times, I'm like, I don't think Florida State is in no matter what they do, because I don't think they are one of the 4 best teams. And that's what the committee said 3 days prior. So I think they got it right. I think Bama, their win over Georgia, is better than Florida State's best win. I think Florida State's best win is probably Bama's 3rd or 4th best win. So it makes sense to me. Texas win and they beat Bama, they should be ahead of Bama. I think it makes sense. I think the committee got it right. That's my take.
I am confused, right? I think the whole world, if you follow sports, you're confused right now because I don't know what his name is, but
Boo's his first name.
Exactly,
Awesome.
right? He said it best. I don't care. Your job as a player, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, is to go out and win, right? No matter who's on the schedule, you play, right? We talked about Michigan, their strength of schedule is so weak, right? But at the end of the day, they still had to go out there and outscore the other teams, okay? That's what Florida State did. And don't get me wrong, it is a completely different team, okay? Without Jordan Travis, it's a completely different team. And I'm not going to deny it here. But you are taking a team that went 13-0 in a Power 5 conference, okay? They did not lose a single game all year long. And again, they lost one player. Quarterback is one of the most, if not, it is the most important position, especially in college football, okay? But at the same time, Florida State's got a defense that is unreal in college football, okay? They've got guys on offense like Keon Coleman, who we've been talking about all year long. So there's 21 other guys on the field that don't get an opportunity now to compete for a national championship, and I think it's unfair. I think, and here's the other thing. We talked about, did they do the right thing? And I will 100% say no. And I have hated Florida State all year long. But at the same time, they didn't even put the 4 best teams in the college football playoff. And that's my statement, okay? You're telling me right now Georgia's not better than Washington? And if you want to say that, you're a liar, and you're wrong. Because at the same time, they didn't put the 4 best teams in the playoff because Georgia is a top 4 team. They won 29 games in a row. They had the best recruiting class in the country. They won 2 national championships in a row. They're one of the top 4 teams in the country, but yet they're sitting on the outside. So they did not put the 4 best teams in. They put Bama in because they won a conference championship. Okay, Florida State won a Power 5 championship, and they went 13-0. It's unfair. At the end of the day, I'm not super upset about it because the fact is Bama's a great football team, and they're on the come-up. I just think there's a lot of better ways they could have done it.
First, a comment on your Georgia take. Your Georgia take has nothing to do with this year. Them winning 29 straight games and 2 straight national championships.
It does. They went undefeated in the regular season.
Yeah,
SEC
but they
schedule.
lost the one game that mattered. Florida, did the committee get it right? There was no right decision. If Florida State would have gotten in, Alabama would have been like, look, Florida State's the 55th best strength of schedule. Look at us. We beat the number 1 team in the country. That did all the stuff that you just mentioned.
But they never lost.
But there's a difference between the 4 best and the 4 most deserving. Mm-hmm. Florida State is one of the 4 most deserving teams in the entire country to be in the college football playoff. Yeah. But they're not one of the 4 best. The problem I have...
So you think Washington's better than Georgia?
No.
Yeah, I think Washington can win a national championship.
But do you think Washington's better than Georgia?
I think they are, yeah.
I'm not even close. The problem that I have is the committee all of a sudden changed on this. Mm-hmm. It was always the 4 most deserving. From 2015 on, because 2014 they dropped TCU down. Mm-hmm. They put the 4 best teams. From 2015 to 2022, they put in the 4 most deserving teams. TCU was not one of the 4 best teams in the country. I don't care that they won a game in the playoff. They were not one of the 4 best teams in the country. And they put them in because they were one of the 4 most deserving teams. And they lost in their conference championship. So that's the only problem I have. Should Bama be in? Yes, they're one of the 4 best teams in the country. The problem I have is the committee just switched up out of nowhere to have it go from 4 most deserving to the 4 best teams. My heart goes out to everyone associated with Florida State. My mom is in shambles right now. I'm sorry, Mom. It's just a Florida State-Michigan first-round game without it being competitive. Yeah. And for the average viewer, I'm happy Alabama's in because now we get to watch the best product.
Yeah.
And it is very tough because, like I said, going from the 4 most deserving teams to the 4 best teams, just in a matter like that, it's not fair, right? But at the end of it, life isn't fair. And so I agree with the committee that Alabama should be in.
Never mind, keep going.
But you can look at Florida State. Yes, they beat everyone. They played what is equivalent to a group of 5 strength of schedule. 55th strength of schedule in the country. I get you went and beat LSU. That is a huge win. Huge win. You went into Clemson and won. Clemson would end up with 8 wins, being your second biggest win, is not good enough. Struggling at Boston College, struggling at Miami. I know it's rivalry games, and you can argue that Alabama struggled at South Florida and at home and at Auburn.
It was a miracle that they even.
That's another thing. But again, my problem. There needs to be a line, and thankfully we'll never have this debate again with a 12-team playoff coming out. But it all of a sudden went from the 4 most deserving teams, and then the head of the CFP chair tweeted out a week ago, we're putting in the 4 best teams. Well, and is there SEC bias? To an extent, yes, but Alabama isn't in because they're in the SEC. I don't think that's relevant.
I disagree. I agree. Just the SEC part. There was no way they were looking at it as a committee and saying, "Are we really going to leave the SEC out?" And that I kind of disagree with the fact they put Alabama. If Bama was in, again, it's hypothetical because we obviously know Alabama's in the SEC. But if they were in a different conference, I still think they're not in over an undefeated team. But you can go.
I think. I get what you're saying with their process on like 4 most deserving to now 4 best, but the reality of the situation is there's about 7 teams that are deserving of a college football playoff spot this year, so they did have to choose the 4 best, and I think with a little mixture of who does deserve it, because Texas, with their strength of schedule, maybe shouldn't be in ahead of a team of like Georgia or Ohio State or Florida State, but the fact that they did go into Bama and win, they deserve it a little bit more. So I think it was a little bit of a mix of both because there were so many teams that did.
Texas 100% deserved it. And my point.
But there's that word right there, deserved it. Just like Florida State deserved to be in.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It goes back to what you just talked about, how all of a sudden in the week of championship football, it changed. And this was my argument to Tanner, right? Because I didn't think he was wrong. Right, and I still believe, I'm very happy Bama's in because it's going to make for viewership better. But the committee could have done one simple thing before they posted their top 4 on last Tuesday. They could have put Florida State at 5 because them putting them at 4, and this is what I told Tanner, you're putting a team, Florida State at 4. Season ends today, they're in. Now all of a sudden, they go and win their last game. They win a conference championship, and now all of a sudden you kick them out. I don't think it's fair.
Well, that is also misleading because Alabama went in and had the biggest win in all of college football, beating the number 1 team.
100%.
But I'm saying that could, in that argument, that could allow a team like Alabama to jump and get ahead of teams like that. But it's really tough because Florida State, I mean. Here's how I'm going to put this.
It's hard.
If Washington lost Michael Penix, they wouldn't be anything. But if Michigan or if Texas lost Quinn Ewers and won, they would be in. So it's like, where is the line with that? Yeah. Because if Michael Penix wasn't playing and they barely squeaked by in their last 3 games, and I know Oregon's better than Louisville, Washington would not be in either. They would have tried everything in their power to get Alabama, Texas, or Georgia in. Yeah. And even if Georgia beat Alabama, I still think they probably would have put Texas over Florida State. And they proved that, and they just would have slowed everyone down.
Here's my one question, and it goes to the 12 team, right, for this question for you guys. And I have my answer, but say this year there were 12 teams, and obviously we all want it right now. Everyone on Twitter is like, emergency 12-team playoff, make it happen. By the way, they could definitely make it happen. So if they could,
no, they can't. All this stuff is all contracts.
No, whatever. I understand, but say 12 teams, okay? Florida State, in my opinion, is in the top 4 if there's a 12-team playoff. Yes or no? Because of the fact they're undefeated.
I still say
Probably not.
I still say no.
So you still think they're not top 4?
Because I think that the committee would want them to lose as much as possible before they get to their big games. So even throwing, I guess it would be Liberty at them if they're the 5 seed, is another opportunity for them to lose so they don't have to watch them get a bye and then, let's be honest, get waxed by Alabama or Michigan or Georgia.
Yeah.
I mean, the lines, hypothetical lines came out, and Alabama would have been a 12-point favorite over Florida State.
Yeah.
And it's, those are betting favorites, whatever. Oregon was a 9.5-point favorite against Washington at 1. It's just...
But at the end of the day, it's not for... And that was kind of my first point. Florida State's job is not to go out and cover spreads. Their job is to win the games, and they went and did that every week, week after week. Stephen A. Smith said something, and usually I hate listening to Stephen A. Smith because some of his takes blow me away. Mike, he said if Deion Sanders was the coach of Florida State, they would be in, and I 100% agree. If Deion Sanders was the coach of Florida State, and they did the exact... No.
Why did we bring Deion Sanders into this?
Because it's a great question. There was so much hype about Colorado. Next thing you know, they go 3-0. They're in your top 10. They're getting ranked nationally because of the Deion Sanders effect. I'm not saying I agree with it, but if he was the coach of Florida State, they had the exact same season. Jordan Travis goes out. They go 13-0. They win the ACC. Whether you agree with me or not, they're putting Deion Sanders and the Seminoles in the playoff simply because of that. And that's just, again, it has no relevancy in the world because it's not going to happen. But it's a great statement because at the end of the day, the committee is 13 people making an opinionated decision on the future of a university, future of college athletes. All I know, it's never going to happen, but I want the Seminoles to go and beat the Bulldogs because do you know how incredible that would be?
Yeah.
Incredible.
And then it could be like 2017 UCF and be like, oh, whatever, we won a national championship.
No.
There's no way in hell Florida State would have won a national championship this year. There's not. There's a way Alabama wins the national championship.
And Texas.
And Texas.
You can't say that. You can't say there's no way they couldn't win.
To answer your question on would Florida State be in a top 4 if there were 12 teams in, the simple and easy answer is no. Because the top 5 in that would be the 5 conference championship winners, and the Big Ten winner the Big Ten is better than the ACC, the Pac-12 is better than the ACC, the Big 12, which is not good, better than the ACC, SEC better than the ACC. So if there were a top 12, Florida State wouldn't be in the top 4 because at the end of the day, they were the ACC winner and the other 4 conferences are better and those 4 conference winners are more deserving, despite their 13.
And again, I'm not going to sit up here saying I'm upset about it too much. I just hate looking at undefeated teams. They got screwed. At the end of the day, they got screwed. Now they got to go play Georgia in a bowl and their season's over at this point. But at the end of the day, these guys are still going around.
I mean, what is the difference that they would have gotten in that one game? They would have gone in that one game, played one bowl game, and probably would have lost, just like they're going to go to the Orange Bowl, play that one bowl game, and probably lose.
Do you think last year...
As a neutral fan, I care. I want to see the best.
Do you think last year, when Purdue won the Big Ten West, they were upset that they had to go play Michigan in the Big Ten Championship? You think they were upset that they got an opportunity to go shock the world? Florida State didn't even get that opportunity.
I'm not saying that they're upset.
They didn't even get that opportunity.
I'm saying as a person that doesn't have an opinion in it, seeing Florida State, to me, they're going to play in one bowl game regardless. If they're going to play Michigan, that's their one bowl game because they're not beating Michigan. Now you get a team in Alabama that can not only beat Michigan, they could beat the winner of the Texas-Washington game. Now you heard our opinions of the playoff, but let's talk about the games that allowed this to take place. Bama, Georgia, as Sarah and I correctly predicted, 27-24. Bama. The thing that impressed me in this game, Bama completely out-physical Georgia. We haven't seen that happen, and Josh Pay had a great point on this. In order for teams to win big games like this, they need to have a +3 turnover margin, special teams gap. There was none of that. Bama went in and straight up beat Georgia, and they beat them on the line of scrimmage. Both, first of all, it's like an NFL game. Watching these teams play. Bama outrushed Georgia.
Highest level of football.
And there was multiple times where they were 3rd and 4th and shorts, and Bama completely blew up the run and stopped them behind the line of scrimmage. Jalen Milroe did just enough, and I said he was going to be a really big factor with the legs. He wasn't a super big factor, but God, Georgia had to put 2 spies on the field at almost all times to allow him to not be as elusive as he wants. Shout out to him and the improvements he made.
No, this Bama team is so different, and that's the thing. They are so well coached.
Yeah, shout out Nick Saban, man. Never question greatness.
They've got dudes all over, and I don't know, not necessarily an argument. We were talking about it with Landon Stubblefield on our team, big Georgia fan. So sorry for him, but he was talking about Kirby Smart versus Nick Saban. I'm like, it's not even a question.
It's not
like
it's not
at the end of the day, like Nick Saban's literally Nick Saban. Like when you compare coaches to somebody in college football, you put Nick Saban up there. So Bama is unreal. They are unreal. They have dudes all over the field. Milroe is really starting to find himself, and I do like their chances against Michigan. We'll talk about that and maybe in a couple of podcasts later. But they are completely different since that loss to Texas. Again, it shows you. I look at that game against Auburn. Although they won by a miracle, at the end of the day, they still scored more points than the other team. And at the end of the day, you just put a win. You just put a check in the win column, and you move on. And that's not necessarily what they did against Georgia, because they won that game from start to finish, and they were unreal. They were unreal to watch. So.
Yeah, I was impressed with Bama. I think Jalen Milroe had a really big impact with his legs on that game Saturday, because his rushing yards don't show up in the box score because of sacks. He had I think he had like a 30 or 40-yard run, and he finished with like 40 yards rushing. And I
don't even think he had 40.
I know he had more rushes that went for like 5 or more yards. Yeah. When the game was on the line, Bama was running the clock out. Nobody could tackle Jalen Milroe. He was downhill, going right, going left, getting blocks, running off the edge, getting first downs, making big plays. Jalen Milroe won that game for Bama. Like I said, I think last week, that 4th and 31, that 4th and goal from the 31-yard line, that play could be the difference between Bama winning a national championship and not winning one. And I'm sticking to it. I mean, this team can win a national championship.
The most impressive thing to me is the entire game. Georgia took the lead, and then Alabama went right down the field and answered.
Yeah, they didn't care.
That is just pure greatness.
Yeah. No,
and shout out to Georgia, man. They went down 10.
They went down 10 and got themselves
and got back in. I mean,
it was 20-10, and next thing
you could argue that was national championship. Those two best teams in college.
Oh, and if any, we would love to watch that happen again, right?
Watch it all the time.
I can watch two SEC powerhouses play against each other all the time, and by far the best game of the weekend, at least. But I mean, at the end of the day, I want to talk about Texas for a second, just because
they looked unreal.
They looked unreal. They looked unstoppable, and it was a team that didn't get a ton of talk because they beat Bama, but then they follow up and lose to Oklahoma, right? Almost lose to UCF the following week.
No, Kansas State.
But they close.
UCF.
Oklahoma was, sorry. Yeah. So they had those close wins, but at the end of the day, you get the job done. It is what it is. I was a little nervous. I wasn't super impressed with Oklahoma State going into the game, but it's a conference championship game. You never know what happens, and man. Texas put the foot on the pedal and did not lift up until the clock hit 0. It was an incredible game by Texas. I tell you what, Texas-Bama national championship is a very, very possible scenario. And I would love that matchup because I love Texas right now. But they were super impressive to me.
452, 4 tutties for Quinn Ewers.
Yeah.
Just really hasn't had a performance on a national stage like that since the Bama game.
Yeah.
And my God, they can do it all. A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy on the outside. You'll be hard-pressed besides Ohio State guys to find 2 better receivers in the country than them two. And, not a lot of comment on this game. Texas went in and just dominated.
Dogs, yeah.
Yeah, I think Texas is more than capable of winning the national championship. It sucks for me that they play Washington right away. I've been on Washington for a long time this season. And I do think Washington is also capable of winning the national championship. The story for me in this game, I know it's a long ways away, a couple weeks away, but Texas has a good D-line, but what Washington does really well is they move that pocket. They roll Penix out. They roll him out, So it's going to be interesting to see that matchup when Texas and Washington.
They got some big dudes on that line, and I totally agree. You start making those boys run across the field. They're going to get tired, and it could be I totally agree. It could be a field day for Penix.
Speaking of Washington, we talked about Oregon and Washington. We all should apologize to Washington. We said it, Tanner and I said on the last podcast, your mouth is feeling better, by the way, everyone discredited Washington, even right after they beat Oregon. It's immediately Stan Laney's fault, blah, blah. Dylan Johnson, and we talked about it, is who's going to be the one that's going to run the ball better, and they're going to win. Dylan Johnson, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Unreal.
Bo Nix was Oregon's leading rusher.
Yeah.
Bucky Irving only had 20 yards. you can't win a game, like you can't win a national championship or a conference championship like that. I mean, shout out to Washington, man. All year they've had to hear it is how Oregon's going to wax them when they see them again. Oregon's 10-point favorites, and they go in and they really control the game for 55 minutes out of the 60.
That score I don't think was that close because Oregon had that big long touchdown with like 2 minutes to go.
Oregon took the lead at some point in the second half.
They did, and Washington responded right away. But Washington's run defense, I've been saying it, it's gotten better and better as the year has gone on, and we just saw it the other day in the Pac-12 championship game. I mean, you mentioned Bucky Irvin, 20 yards. So Washington's run defense going to have to continue on that same path and trajectory to stop Texas, but their corners, man, they're long, athletic, they're physical, and the length of those corners is really what separates Washington's secondary from other secondaries, and they're going to have to play well and beat Quinn Ewers. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been hating on Washington. I'm never going to hide it. I was hating on Florida State. I think they're a great football team. I don't know if they're good enough to win a national championship, and that's just my take. And I could be completely wrong. And if the Huskies went and won a national championship, I'd be a little surprised, but it is what it is. I said it to these guys and plenty of other people that we know that love sports and everything. I wanted, after watching that first half of football, I wanted Oregon to win that game so no Pac-12 team got in the top 4 because I was unimpressed, first of all, by Bo Nix. Bo Nix looked off. Oregon looked off in general. And then Washington looked very solid in the second half. Wasn't super impressed in the first half, but I was just kind of annoyed by the game. And what was the final? 27-24?
No, it was
higher.
Was it higher?
It was like 34-31.
Yeah, something like that. I was just, that game, that final score does nothing. Washington completely took over that game once Oregon scored and you knew it too. When you watched Oregon go down the field, you're like, well, it doesn't matter. You know Michael Penix is going to get there and he's going to score. So I'm very impressed with Washington's offense. But again, they have been playing Pac-12 defenses all year long, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens when they play a defense like Texas, and if they win, a defense like Michigan and Bama, because I tell you what, that's the one reason why I don't think Washington can win a national championship, because no matter who they play, they're going to have to face a Texas defense, a Bama defense, or a Michigan defense, who are some of the best defenses in the country.
Yeah.
And so we'll see.
We'll see. I can't wait for this game. So the playoff games are going to be spectacular. Probably the best group of 4 teams, potential games that we could have. Any more comments on these games?
No.
We can move to the NFL. NFL, I feel like, was kind of outshined, obviously, by college football championship weekend. First, before we get to anything, you guys need to apologize to the Packers. You guys are on here saying, everything that I'll do is luck, and granted,
it was luck.
The refs.
It was clear pass interference.
Because I have a note written down on my paper. It's Packers will make the playoffs because when you look at it right now, they're in a playoff spot, and their remaining games are the Giants, Bucks,
100%.
Panthers, Vikings, and Bears. They might not. The Packers,
just give it to them.
The Packers might only finish with 6 losses. They might finish 11.
No, and I will 100% stick with my take on the Packers being lucky. But that's not why they won the game. I was telling...
Shout out Jordan Love.
That's what I mean. Jordan Love has looked very good. Just under 900 yards, 8 touchdowns or whatever, maybe 7 touchdowns. No interceptions. He's looked very good, especially in a wide receiver core that is not good. Not good. Christian
Watson's a big loss, though.
They're the youngest team in the NFL.
Yeah, they are a team that, as Bears fans, we knew it. We had a feeling. We are used to watching a mediocre quarterback come out of after watching somebody great, and he becomes the next great version of somebody. But Jordan Love's incredible. What he did to the Chiefs is incredible. But I also want to point out the Chiefs aren't anything special right now. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, he needs to break up with Taylor Swift. Because I tell you what, they are not. And Matt Nagy ruined Patrick Mahomes.
I mean,
yeah. So Patrick Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, we get in the playoffs.
But right now, it's getting to a point where it's like, what's going on with him? Because he's not looking elite. He's not making passes like he used to. Again, one of the, if not the worst receiving course in the NFL.
It's bad.
It is awful.
Yeah.
Like, it is awful.
Yeah.
But just that dynamic of Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, it's not there right now. And so
I mean, they had the same group last year. They won a Super Bowl. But
yeah, it's crazy.
let's talk
yeah.
about another NFC North team since your beloved Bears weren't playing. The Lions, man, go into the Little Caesars Dome that it's called now, and really it got close to the end. But I mean, they were up 21-0 before I even got
First
home
quarter.
to turn on red zone.
First quarter.
That was a good bounce back performance for them. Again, the defense is just still not Super Bowl caliber. You're letting Jameis go in there and he kind of light you up for a stretch.
Yeah.
And Alvin Kamara was the best player on the field, and you could really notice it this time. And I'm not saying you don't notice it other times, but it was like, wow, like this dude's just different. They could hand the ball every time, and he's getting however many yards you need him to get.
Yeah, we were watching that game on Red Zone, and it was like, oh my gosh, are the Saints going to come back and win?
Thank God.
Because, like we've said in past weeks, Lions defense sometimes looks a little shaky and everything, but that offense, it's got some firepower at the end of the day. If Jared Goff can be good, he doesn't have to be great. Amon-Ra is incredible. Sam Laporta is truthfully coming in as one of the best
hating on
tight
him? Someone was hating on him 2 weeks ago or last week. It was definitely you. You said he wasn't as good as it was originally thought.
I was talking about Jared Goff. I was talking about Jared Goff and the Lions. Maybe a little Sam Laporta. But no, they've got some offensive firepower. It's just they need Jared Goff to play good because that defense I don't think is gonna ever really shut anybody out. So.
Yeah, I think the Lions are a little bit overrated.
Mm-hmm.
They've played kind of a weaker schedule so far. I don't think their defense is very good, and I think for them to win, Jared Goff has to play at an elite level, and I don't think he can sustain that for a couple games in a row in the playoffs and down the stretch, really. To be honest, as a Bears fan, I think we're going to beat them on Sunday in Soldier Field. I really do. Excited for that one, but we'll see. I don't know.
He thinks the Bears are going to make the playoffs. We talked about it.
I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but I do think
There's a path.
I do think that Bears-Packers game in the final week could mean something. Probably for the Packers, but maybe for the Bears. We'll see. I don't know.
Who knows, man?
We're only
How
two
about
ga-
your Bucks? You
the
beat
Bears only two
You beat the
games,
Panthers, man.
The Bucs suck.
Yeah,
They
it was
still
bad.
suck.
I tell you
Shout
what,
out Mike Evans. But
Tanner and I realized we were watching Red Zone. We were like, man, does this week's slate suck?
The Bucs
Like,
are
it
rough.
was bad.
Even after all that, they're a game back in the division. They play Atlanta Sunday. If they win, the Bucs will be leading the NFC South.
And what's also funny is we were talking about like how the slate sucked. We were like, oh, but besides the 3:30, the 3:30 games sucked too because they were all blowout. Like,
before we get all the way into that Niners and Eagles game, I'm going to go into my top five, just to kind of lead us into that. So at 5, I got the Dallas Cowboys as my number 5 team in the NFL. So I have a note. I think Dak is probably my MVP right now in the league, which is kind of crazy. But number 4, I got the Dolphins. Number 4, I got the Dolphins. Number 3, I got the Eagles. 2, I got the Ravens, who did not play this week. And at 1, I got the 49ers. So, what do you think about the top 5?
I will say,
I deserve my credit. I said after the 49ers lost 3 in a row that they're still the best team in football.
Yeah.
I said it leading up to the Eagles game that they're the best team in football.
Yeah.
And they went out and freaking pounded the Eagles.
I will say your top 5 is getting so much better. That first week we did it, I was like, this is a segment we could never do again because you're just getting crazy. Only 2 teams in there I kind of disagree with. Only one, the Dolphins. I think at the end of the day, who did they play? Washington and Sam Howell. And by the way, Dak Prescott being your MVP he's unreal. I have him in fantasy. Super thankful for Dak in fantasy, but definitely not my MVP yet. I will say Tyreek Hill is getting that argument because holy cow, we were looking at fantasy, looking at fantasy numbers. I'm like, he's got 3 receptions for 150 yards because, and you know, at the end of the day, what's up with teams not putting a safety? Like what you want? You just want to trust your corner one-on-one coverage against Tyreek Hill. He's the fastest man in the NFL. What are we doing?
I have just as good of a chance as covering him as that corner.
No, definitely not. You're definitely not. You're 10 yards out, and Tua's just there. You go.
You guys talk about all these, the good offense, but I think the NFL right now has a lot of bad offenses. Patriots, Falcons,
Tom Brady
Steelers, Jets.
Yeah.
And, Tom Brady, I don't necessarily agree with what he said, the mediocrity. But with those teams, there's a lot of mediocrity.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah, but, I mean, he won a division last year that was filled with mediocrity. And, yes, there are not 32 starting caliber QBs right now.
Yeah.
And you are feeling that. I mean, that Chargers Patriots game, the Patriots, and I'll get into this later, the Patriots have not given up more than 10 points the last 3 weeks, and they're 0-3 in those games. That is insane. You have to be historically bad offensively, and they are historically bad offensively.
6-0.
Yeah.
It officially might go down as one of the worst football games ever. Like
one of the worst football teams ever.
The Patriots, Jets, and the Steelers are just, and the Steelers are a game out of the playoff. They're tied for the last spot.
They're in the
Kenny
playoffs.
Pickett dropping out, who knows what's going on there?
Kenny Pickett's not a world beater.
No, I agree, but
he's just
and
as
I hope
good
so
as-
because I was on the Mitch train when he was on the Bears and everything, but I just think you talked about you kind of disagree with Tom Brady. I totally agree. You even look at the top quarterbacks. Let's talk about Trevor Lawrence for a little bit. He is now starting to find himself. Patrick Mahomes has not been Patrick Mahomes. There is not a quarterback right now, honestly, besides Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, and Josh Allen's kind of finding his own now. Brock Purdy that are doing things that are like, okay, that's what they're supposed to do. That's what they did last year. Everyone else is just being mediocre at best. And so I totally agree with Tom Brady. I think it's one of the best takes that he's ever had.
You say they're being mediocre at best. Patrick Mahomes is still not being mediocre. By the average quarterback term, Patrick Mahomes is still being mediocre. He's the reason why they have 8 wins.
For all of those guys, though, that I've listed, Trevor Lawrence was having below average numbers to start the season. Josh Allen's now starting to find himself. We're not seeing a league full of a bunch of star quarterbacks right now, and that's not to discredit these guys because they are all stars. But when Brock Purdy is right now probably a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, I think that's an issue. And granted, that's without Joe Burrow. That's Joe Burrow going out and everything like that. But I just think I'm not upset about it. I just think it's an interesting point that Brock Purdy is not a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, but right now he is, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think kind of you mentioned Mitch Trubisky. The stars are kind of aligning for an interesting matchup that could happen because the Chiefs are going to probably be like a 3 or a 4 seed, and they're going to get like a 5 or a 6. And right now the Steelers are the 6 and the Chiefs are the 3, so they play each other round 1. Matt Nagy goes down and loses to Mitch Trubisky. I think that'd be a great story because I do think Matt Nagy is a huge part of the Chiefs' struggles. He's calling the plays now. And they're just not the same. They're not the same at all. So
no, I agree.
That's kind of my take.
No, I totally agree. The NFL's in a weird spot, right? But the Niners, after that win against Philly, it's not to discredit Philly because I think Philly's still one of the best teams in the NFL. But
went into their home.
But that Niners win is one of the best wins we've seen in football in the past couple of years.
Even 6 or 7-0, I was like, 49ers going to win.
Yeah.
And they went out, they out-physicaled them, they out-skilled positioned them. Debo Samuel was unreal.
And that's the thing. It wasn't like CMC went out there and put up crazy numbers. Debo Samuel looked incredible. 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, 1 receiving. George Kittle looked good. Like Brandon Ayuk looked good. Like everyone on that team is incredible, right? So and then that defense just has stars all over the field. I tell you what, I didn't expect. I wasn't surprised that the 49ers won, but I was damn surprised that they went out and blew out Philly.
They beat them down.
Blew out Philly.
But you got anything?
I want to talk about, just briefly, 2 AFC South teams. I'm going to start with Minshew Mania strikes again. Colts get a big overtime win. I know it's the Titans. I know you guys maybe are low on the Colts, but they keep finding ways to win games, and they've honestly had more injuries probably than any other team. Yeah. So credit to Shane Steichen.
Yeah, shout out to him.
Steichen, however you say it.
He's coaching his butt
Coach of the
right
year.
now.
It's an incredible feat to be in playoff, right? Be in a playoff position without your quarterback that we thought. Anthony Richardson looked like the best quarterback in that class.
Yeah.
He gets hurt. Now C.J. Stroud's kind of emerging as the best, obviously. But yeah, I agree. The AFC South is an interesting division. We talked about it. If the Bears drop maybe a game this weekend or something, I might hop on the Colts bandwagon.
Yeah,
just because they're localish, right? They're localish. So
I'm kind of already there with them. But
yeah,
shout out to him, man. Jonathan Taylor's missed more than half the year. They lost their number 1 corner, and they're still somehow 7-5. Next, the Texans. Huge win for the Texans over the Broncos. The Broncos were a team that was hot. C.J. Stroud finds a way to win a game. His defense, Will Anderson, man, he had a great game.
And Derek the quarterback,
both
every play.
Really shout out.
Every play, Will Anderson's chasing Russell Wilson.
Yeah, Derek. Do you see the one of the pictures? Derek Stingley went over. That's the LSU freshman year, Derek Stingley that we saw.
Yeah, 2 picks by him.
Good to see him get back. But let's get into legendary and in shambles. We'll do in shambles first. I'll go first. I just talked about him. The Patriots are completely and utterly in shambles. They've clinched their worst record in over almost 25 years. I've just never seen so much offensive incompetence from a team that has been, in my lifetime, the best franchise in the NFL. And it's shocking to see. So their Patriots are is in complete shambles.
Yeah, my in shambles is the Iowa Hawkeyes offense. Caitlin Clark has scored more points in 8 games than Iowa football scored in their entire season. In 13 games.
Insane.
So, again, were we surprised that they got blown up by Michigan? No. Did I think they might have put up a field goal? Honestly, I didn't really think so. But, I mean, to get shut out in the Big Ten Championship, but I saw that in the 13 games they played. And Caitlin Clark is not only like a couple points ahead, she's like 20 points ahead.
Caitlin Clark is unreal.
And she is unreal. So, and basketball and football are 2 different sports, but I think that's an incredible thing. So, I tell you what, Iowa being in a Power 5, they need to figure it out.
Yeah.
They're too good defensively.
Yeah.
they need to start putting up some points. So they're my
They are going to have a new
Iowa.
They're going to have a new OC coming in.
Kyle McCord to Iowa.
They're still going to be mid.
I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate it.
My shambles is the chain guy from the Saints Lions game.
Yeah, we can't.
We can't really show it, but I mean, I'm just gonna put this situation out there. Imagine you're retired and your little job is like to do the chains at NFL game, and you get a player pushing you and your leg is just snapped.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I feel so bad for him. It was gross. We don't want to show it, but I feel bad because
Tanner rewinded it 3 times.
And, yeah.
Rewound. I don't know.
But I feel so bad for him because that's a guy who's just coming out doing his job on a Sunday.
Making bare minimum.
Probably a neat job. And
minimum wage.
Now that happens and everybody saw it. So I feel bad for that guy. He's in shambles.
Give us your legendary.
My legendary moment, I don't really want to go with the obvious. There's a few obvious ones you could pick. I'm going to go something more personal for me this week. My legendary moment is the Bucs beating the Panthers because I really want the Bears to have the first overall pick. Panthers lose and
screw it up.
It's looking highly likely that the Bears are going to have that number 1 pick.
Yeah.
So,
Man, the Panthers are bad.
They're bad. They're bad.
My legendary is it goes to the Eagles game, and it was the security guard for the head security guard. It is legendary. He got almost knocked out by Greenlaw. First of all, the punch. I didn't know what happened until I looked back on Twitter, and all of a sudden I'm looking on TV, and the security officer is getting a standing ovation in front of who knows how many thousands of people in Philly because Greenlaw decided to swing on him, for no reason. I thought maybe the security guard did something wrong, but I rewatched it. He didn't do anything wrong. So I just think it's a legendary moment because that guy, probably not a lot of people knew who he was, and next thing you know, he's now getting a standing ovation as he's getting escorted off the game. I thought
NFL is using an example on what not to do.
Correct.
There should never be a situation where a person like that can have an impact on the game.
Correct. Yep.
But my legendary is Mike Evans. 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He continues to add to his own record to start a career. He's one behind Randy Moss and a few behind. I'm blanking on his name, Jerry Rice.
Yep.
And it's just he's dominant. And against the Panthers, he was dominant. He's been dominant all season for the Bucs.
Yeah.
He's made Baker look competent. He's made the Bucs in general look competent.
Yeah.
He's the most important player. I think really he's one of the most important pieces to a team in all of football.
Yeah.
Without him, I don't even know if the Bucs have 3 wins.
Well, and it's credit to him because he's done it with a ton of different quarterbacks, right?
With
Jameis.
Mike Lennon.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Jameis, Josh McCown.
It's not like he had Tom Brady his entire career. Yeah, I saw that.
It's just.
It's not like he had Tom Brady his entire career.
Mike Evans is such a stud. I hope the Bucs can find a way to re-sign him.
No doubt.
But yeah, if you guys made it all this way, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share it to someone, and we'll see you guys on Friday.
Yep. See ya. Peace.